All right, so we're going to welcome back Matt Marshall to the stage, and he's going to be chatting with Andrew at Deep Learning AI. Give it up for Matt and Andrew.
So welcome, Andrew. Andrew,
Thank you. Hope you all see and hear me. It's great to be here.
there he is. Yeah, hopefully you can see me okay.
Yep.
So, hey, Andrew, nice to meet you. So, how do you define agentic AI systems? I think there's a big question around just starting with that. What can they best do for enterprises today?
So maybe I'll share you a little bit of history of how agentic AI came, or the term agentic AI came about. I've never really told this story as explicitly as I'm planning to. About a year and a half ago, I saw that the technical development community was starting to build systems that wasn't just prompting an LLM and getting a response, right? Today, you can prompt the AI model, get a response. But instead, the technical community was starting to develop workflows that are more iterative, where we could to get it to write a report, we will let it first write an outline, then do some web search, then write a first draft, then read this first draft, then critique and iterate and end up with a much better work output. So I saw, and I was working on some of these systems myself, able to deliver a much better response. But what happened in the technical community was there started to be these debates about, is this really an agent or not? And some people said all of this is an agent. Some people said to be an agent, you need to be highly autonomous and take action and so on. And I felt that this debate was not that fruitful. So I came out and started using the word agentic AI and proposed to the community, let's stop having this debate. Let's think of it as having degrees of autonomy, where some things, simple enterprise workflow automation is less agentic. And then there are things that can be highly autonomous, can carry a complex sequence of tasks all by itself without human intervention, and the degrees of autonomy. So instead of debating what is an agent and what isn't, let's just use the term agentic and think about it as degrees of autonomy. And that shifted the terminology. So I think, obviously, I still feel a little bit of a thrill when I see so many people use the term agentic, because frankly, I think I push for that and managed to make that happen. But it's been hopeful to just move past the debate to for all of us to then spend more time building these systems that instead of prompting them and getting a response, can take multiple steps. I'm seeing this having a huge impact on all sorts of enterprise workflows. Um, I know there's been hype on AGI, artificial general intelligence, or whatever. This idea that someday AI will be so intelligent, we don't need humans or whatever. That is hype. That's really inaccurate. What will happen for businesses over the next, I want to say, decade would be my prediction. We'll be looking at a lot of very complex workflows in enterprises, current workflows and workflows that we aren't even doing today, and figuring out how to implement them in these iterative, multi-step agentic workflows, and it will create a lot of value for businesses.
Thanks, Andrew. Great response. So these new reasoning AI models like OpenAI's O3, right, or Gemini 2.5, have ignited more interest in agents because they're smarter and trained to use tools natively. You're actually stating that dumber models, like you've talked about this, like GPT 3.5 plus agents, can actually beat smarter models like GPT-4. That was a study you did, right? 95% versus say 67% accuracy, right? So dumber model with agents beats smarter model. So do you see agentic design as the do you still see agentic design as the larger ROI lever, or are we entering a phase where these reasoning models shift that balance? As models get smarter and start to pull in more native tool usage and other functionality, how should developers think about this?
So I think reasoning models are a fantastic improvement over non-reasoning models, and my teams and many other teams increasingly use reasoning models in part of an agentic workflow. So the core idea of AI agents is that instead of just prompting them to get a response, you can map out a much more complex workflow. For example, we may have employees that are downloading a document, reading some fields, doing a internet search to make sure that someone we're about to sell to doesn't have compliance or whatever problems, and then filling it out in a different form, and then looking up some code to figure out the tariffs, and so on. So we have a lot of complex multi-step enterprise workflows, and agentic systems are stepping in to do these complex multi-step tasks. Um, Reasoning models are a fantastic building block to build these complex agentic workflows, but they're absolutely not a replacement. What has happened is it turns out that many developers were already prompting the non-reasoning LLMs to think out loud, sometimes called chain of thought reasoning, where we say instead of blurting out the answer, dear LLM, why don't you just think through step by step this problem before saying what you think is the answer at the end. And this resulted in much better performance for the non-reasoning generation of LLMs. And then with really OpenAI doing a lot of the pioneering work with O1 and then later, O3, O4, and DeepSeek and Anthropic and Google Gemini, multiple teams, many teams have these reasoning models now. Um, this thinking chain of thought got baked into the LLM, and this was a very powerful step forward. But what I'm seeing, at least at this moment in time, is um, general purpose reasoning is common enough or is useful enough to bake it into the LLM because a lot of businesses will want to use it. But for a lot of enterprises, we have very boutique workflows. So, for example, my Team AI Fund, we have a workflow where we look at Google Drive, look at the documents, extract it out. That's such a boutique workflow that kind of one of my team members does. Probably not worth the expense of training an AI model and then spending tons of money on that just to automate a simple workflow. So, for a lot of those workflows, it will make more sense to just implement an agentic workflow to just get the job done. If ever there are, I don't know, millions of users or something doing very similar things, then baking it into the maybe not as many as millions, but a large number of users, then baking it in would make sense. I think that's what's happening in reasoning models. So I think agentic workflows will continue to be a big deal. In my team at AI Fund, we're seeing it improve our ability to reason about tricky legal documents, do medical healthcare diagnosis. We have startups using this for tariff compliance, to give good career advice. We're seeing this really be instrumental for many different applications.
Great. Andrew, you've highlighted the MCP, the model context protocol, as a key Lego brick for connecting agents to tools and data. Tell us what it is and why it's important. And with OpenAI, Anthropic, and dev tool vendors now adopting MCP standards, what interoperability gaps still slow these pilot projects down?
So MCP was a great step forward, but there's still a lot to be done. MCP was proposed by Anthropic as a way to connect models primarily to sources of data and some other things. But it turns out that if you have, say, 10 model providers and 20 data sources, it is very inefficient if every model provider needs to figure out how to integrate with Google Drive, how to integrate with OneDrive, how to integrate with local documents, how to integrate with GitHub. So for 10 model providers to integrate 20 data sources, it took kind of 200 pieces of work, 10 times 20. Whereas if MCP, um, you can define a standardized way. So the amount of work becomes 10 plus 20, kind of instead of n times n work is n plus m work. And the other really interesting thing about MCP is it binds the integration at runtime rather than at development time. So for example, if I'm writing code and I want to integrate with, say, Google Drive, I can look up the Google Drive API and integrate that specific API into my software. So that works. But that's making a decision at the implementation time on how to integrate with one thing. One exciting part of MCP is it postpones the decision of how to get my LM access to data to runtime rather than at development time. So I can write my LM, and then when I'm running it, it can look around and see what data sources are available. And if a new data source that I didn't even think about when I was writing my code, maybe the LM can figure out how to use it. So it's a fantastic step forward. When OpenAI also agreed to adopt it, I think it was in March that OpenAI made the announcement. It was a bit of a surprise to a lot of people, including me, frankly. But I think that caused the industry to coalesce around it as more of an industry standard. Having said that, I think, and my team, Deep Learning.ai, we actually worked with Anthropic to teach a short course on MCP. So for the developers, the Deep Learning.ai short course on MCP is kind of a definitive source of information created with Anthropic on how to use it. I think that the protocol still has room to improve. For example, right now, MCP gives you a flat file list, like a long list of resources available. But for really complex information sources, I think the protocol, I hope, will evolve toward more hierarchical discovery. So, for example, if I want to integrate with really complex cloud service, a simple flat list of all the APIs of all the services, it doesn't work. There's just too many of them. So I think eventually we'll need to MCP, hopefully MCP, maybe other things will need to evolve to a more hierarchical discovery mechanism. So it's early days. It's a great step forward with many more steps to come.
Yeah, great answer. And we didn't have time to touch on all the security and other governance issues that are related to MCP in production, right? So, Andrew, landing AI, your new agentic document extraction accurately extracts PDF files into LLM ready Markdown. There are a ton of these kind of OCR, RCR models coming out. Tell us how that works and what people can do with it. Which multimodal agent patterns are proving most enterprise ready today? Vision first, text first, or hybrid?
So, it turns out that AI as a general purpose technology, like electricity, another general purpose technology, it makes many, many new applications possible that just were not possible before. So I think businesses, if you can get the right talent in house, which is sometimes a bit of a challenge, with the right talent, you can explore and execute on tons of business use cases. What you mentioned about landing AI's agentic document extraction is one technology that opens up a particularly large set of opportunities, not the only ones, but a really exciting one, which is OMs are very good at processing text data, and all of us have tons of basic PDF files and forms in our personal laptops, in our enterprise data warehouses, and it turns out that previously most models extracting text, they kind of got it like I don't know 80% right or something. And for some applications, being 80% right is good enough. But if you take, for example, invoice matching, common finance function, we get so many invoices that they match them to the database. Be able to extract out every line of a complex form invoice of complex formatting to match it against a database. That's an important use case. And what Landing AI did, what my team did was we built agentic document extraction that, unlike traditional OCR that looks at the document and blurts out a bunch of text, sometimes slightly inaccurately, we examine the document iteratively with an agentic workflow where we take a document, cut into pieces, examine it, reflect on it, make sure we really get the extracted information as accurate as possible. And this opens up a lot of opportunities for um, businesses to process, financial invoices or healthcare medical patient records or insurance claim forms. And it turns out, for example, so many businesses have so many forms. Somehow, a lot of businesses, we ask people to fill out forms, but forms with fields, checkboxes, this is fundamentally a very visual representation of image of information. And traditional OCR algorithms, they just don't extract the information correctly. So these agentic document extraction, we can pull out this text, in a much more accurate way for downstream processing. And actually, I was the other day I was looking at the chart of adoption. It really looks like that, right? The amount of users adopting agentic document extraction is really ticking off in a very exciting way. And so, yeah, working hard on new features so I think we'll announce soon. But I think there's actually because LMs process text, getting the text out of your PDF files opens up a lot of application opportunities.
Moving to another big concern for enterprise deployments, evaluation and observability at age and scale. Right. In recent talks, you've emphasized systematic evaluation loops for every new autonomy increment. What concrete metrics, dashboards, red team drills belong in an agentic software development lifecycle? And where are the biggest tooling white spaces you hope the community will solve this year?
So, um, observability is important. It usually comes a little bit later. Maybe this is how I usually advise most businesses. With the rise of AI technology, agentic technology, agentic document extraction, and so on, there's a huge number of applications that can now be built. One of the biggest challenges of many businesses is talent. And it is true that some, the large AI companies are paying $5, $10 million range salaries for people that know how to train AI foundation models. So that sometimes is a bit of sticker shock. But the good news is for engineers able to build applications, the price is not anywhere near the $5 billion range. So I think, because the number of large companies competing in a can't afford to lose way for talent to train these AI foundation models, those salaries have been bid up dramatically. But for building software applications, the salaries aren't nearly as high as that. I don't say it's cheap, but it's not, $5 million. It's much less than that. But I think most businesses still do not have enough talent to execute on these projects. And then I feel like uh, with AI assisted coding, so using, there's a GitHub Copilot generation and the Cursor Windsurf. And these days, I personally use a Cloud Code the most now. Cloud Code with Cloud 4 released like 3, 4 weeks ago. It's just my personal, but I find that these productivity tools are letting developers prototype like crazy. So there's so many projects that previously would have taken me, 3 months and 6 engineers to build, that today I or one of my engineers will build literally on a weekend. And so this lets us prototype really fast and decide what to take to production. Um, and if we can prototype 20 things and 18 die a quick death, and that's the price of finding the two that are really valuable, that's actually a very good trade off. And so, unlike, I know there's been angst that a lot of proof of concepts don't make it to production. I don't agree. I feel like the cost of a proof of concept is going so low that I'm fine doing lots of POCs that get thrown away as a price of buying the ones that are really valuable. And then when you do so I would say focus on giving the talent and executing those projects. And then when that happens, there is an important role for observability and safety and guardrails. Um, I tend to frankly put those in later because I find that one of the ways that large businesses grind to halt is if for an engineer to try anything, they need sign-offs from like 5 vice presidents or something, right? And I think many large businesses, we have something to lose. We can't afford to have a random innovation team ship something to damage the brand, leak sensitive information, create a secret loophole. So we have something to lose. But this is why many businesses end up saying things like, before you ship anything, I need you to go through privacy review, marketing review, legal review, compliance review, HR review, whatever, and then everything grinds to a halt. So I find that for many businesses, if we can instead create sandboxes that lets developers, innovative teams, iterate really quickly, build prototypes, but because it's running on a sandbox with limited private information, not shipping outside using the company brands, risking damage to the brand, that leaves teams run really quickly, and then we can see what works, and only then invest in those things to make sure it's responsible, doesn't downside, and then invest in resources at that time to take it to scale. And when that happens, the observability is an important piece of it.
Right. Okay. So I think you've answered it's part of my next question, which was, you've talked about the speed of execution is the single best predictor of startup success, and this is also relevant for enterprise leaders hamstrung by these rigidity controls. So I think sandbox is your answer. I'm actually surprised by how many companies still haven't instituted something like that. But
And
moving
but
on.
can I share something about speed? There's something that occurred to me. So all my life, but many years, even before Gen AI, I've had a personal obsession with speed. So I used to go to my teams and say, don't take 2 days to do something that should take 1 day, because the price is not 1 day slower. The price is twice as slow, which may not be survivable in some businesses. And it occurred to me, I feel like, some people think speed means work harder, is stressful, and so on. That's not what it's meant to be. Um, Imagine that we've been on a roller coaster. It's kind of slow moving roller coaster, still kind of fun, but it's a slow moving roller coaster. But what's happened in the last year, our roller coaster just picked up a lot of speed, and it's fun. It's really exciting. It feels like things are moving faster than ever before. We can write code, ship products, it comes feedback faster than ever before. So I feel like the world is now on a very fast moving roller coaster, and it's great.
Andrew, fantastic. We've got 15 seconds. I wanted to take at least one of the questions that came in from Huva. What can we learn from lean principles to encourage employees to shape their own work environment, given that agentic trends are causing maybe a little bit of dislocation in the enterprise? And anything
Um,
specifically for
yeah.
employees?
I think in the future, one of the most important skills of any job role will be the ability to tell AI exactly what you want so they can do it for you. People that know how to do that will be much more powerful and be able to accomplish much more than people that don't. And I think for the foreseeable future, one of the best ways to tell a computer what you want is to write code, but not to write code yourself, but to get AI to write code for you. Because of AI coding assistance, the difficulty of writing code is lower than ever before. And what this means is, actually, frankly, on my team, the marketers, HR professionals, the finance professionals, we would kind of have asked everyone to learn to code, and it actually gives a meaningful productivity boost. And I find that my team just does stuff that non-software engineers just does a ton of stuff that would not be possible if they did not know how to code. So my advice to individuals is AI and computers is becoming even more important. So go learn about it and take control of it.
Andrew, thank you very much for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Matt.